What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from TheTokenMinorities, and I am back with my team builder for Week 1 of the GBA D-League Season 3. This week we are against 6fthax and his Durham Druddigons, a really exciting matchup. I've been a fan of his YouTube channel for a long time, and to get the chance to play him right away in Week 1 of the D-League is just awesome. It's really cool. So, huge shout out to my opponent. If you aren't already familiar with him, I would be a little bit surprised as he's been established on YouTube for a lot longer than we have. Make sure to give him a look. He will be linked in the description below. Now, before I jump into the matchup a bit, I do want to, of course, welcome any new viewers to TTM, or to my videos in particular. I hope you will enjoy what you see here and what you see throughout this season, and if you do enjoy, feel free to stick around and subscribe. There's a lot of content you can see on this channel, and it's not just stuck on giraffe format. We also have a lot of TCG related videos if you might be interested in that, so I hope you'll check it all out. Now let's go ahead and dive right on into this matchup a bit, as I spent a fair amount of time in my team build and in my just analysis of what his team is and maybe some of the flaws in his team, and I think I've really found a couple pretty big holes that can be exploited through his his draft. So looking across this draft, he has Kieran Black, Tapu Fini, Shaman, Donphan, Bronzong, Reuniclus, Greninja, which is Torrent only, Salazzle, Mega Aerodactyl, Savali, which can take on all forms, and a Raichu, where Raichu and Kieran Black are the Z Crystal holders. Now there's two big I don't really want to call them flaws, but they're two big aspects of his draft that I think I can exploit with my own building. The first of which is that his wall breaking potential is limited to base 95 speed and lower. He really only has, in my opinion, one wall breaker, and that is Kieran Black. Mega Aerodactyl kind of can be a wall breaker if it's adamants and if it has like a +1 boost from a Hone Claws, but that requires a +1 boost from a Hone Claws, quite frankly, and even when it has that, it still doesn't break that many walls. It breaks some, of course, but walls that have recovery and maybe just something as simple as a defensive Muse still can deal with a +1 Mega Aerodactyl, so that's not the best wall breaker by any means. The Salazzle is a decent wall breaker as well, but of course there are ways to wall out things like that on the special defensive side, and the same applies to Greninja, which actually doesn't really get boosting moves outside of workups. So the only true wall breaker on his team is Kieran Black, in my opinion. And with that said, with Kieran Black being restricted at a base 95 speed tier, there's a lot of mons on my draft that actually outspeed base 95. That was a point that I made when I was drafting my team, whereas I wanted to have a lot of defensive options that are base 100 and higher. And when my draft is so bulky offensive, you can see things like Torrent, which is fast and can also be defensive, most notably with an Assault Vest, but it can invest in a bulky way if I want to as well. But Mew, Mega Kangaskhan, both base 100s, both can be super fat as well. And then you have things like Cobalion, which can easily be bulkier, and you have things like the I guess that's all as far as Pokemon faster than base 100, so that's all I'll really talk about here in that case. But yeah, so I have a lot of options that can do that, and that makes Kieran Black's wall breaking potential potentially a little bit worse against my team than it might be against others. It's still good against my slower stuff, there's no denying that, because Kieran Black is freaking Kieran Black, but I think I can work around that whenever that's his pure wall breaker, meaning that I can bring a lot of I can take advantage of that basically with how I'm building. I will talk about that as I get to the actual team itself. But the other issue on his team that I'm going to really try to exploit with my team building is the fact that he is very weak to momentum. I just feel like he has a lot of pretty passive switch-ins to a lot of members of my team, for just the different members of my team force in Pokemon, force in specific Pokemon on his team that I feel like I can pretty easily U-turn or Volt Switch on and seriously take advantage of with my offensive options. So just coupling that fact with the fact that his wall breaking potential is limited to base 95, I really feel like if I command the speed in this game and I command the defenses in this game, then it could be a pretty clean win on my end, quite honestly. So that's the general idea that I'm trying to build around. But offensively on my team, I do have pretty massive threats to him in the Mega Kangaskhan as well as the Scolipede, especially, quite frankly. Scolipede just murders him. So combination Mega Kangaskhan and Scolipede can probably carry me offensively, but I also feel like Mew can probably cook up a nice set against this team as well, and I do think I have a pretty good one planned out here, so I will show you that in just a sec. But in terms of his biggest threats against me, I already talked about Kieran Black a little bit, but if Kieran Black is able to command speed control, maybe by way of Z Hail, or maybe just from a Choice Scarf, I think that could be a pretty big threat to me. Or even just some sort of sub set. If it gets up a free sub against me, it could start doing some serious damage since I don't really have the best ice resists on my Giraffe. So that's something to keep in mind. I also think that the Mega Aerodactyl is pretty good against me, both defensively and offensively, especially as more of a utility option, as it's able to pretty well shut down things like Mew if it gets off a taunt. It's able to shut down kind of Mega Kangaskhan, kind of, emphasis on kind of. It's also decent at dealing with Scolipede if I wasn't carrying Aqua Tail, but obviously I'm going to bring coverage for Mega Aerodactyl, so I do think Mega Aerodactyl is pretty good against me overall though. But the biggest threat that he has against my team, I feel, is actually the Reuniclus. Is if you look at maybe a Trick Room Life Orb Reuniclus, all it really needs is the coverage options of Psychic, Focus Blast, and Shadow Ball to be able to hit my entire team super hard, and with that Life Orb it packs a freaking punch. So what I really need to be able to do is to knock off that Life Orb, just in case. I need to knock off the Life Orb so that some of my fatter things on my draft can deal with it more effectively. Is whenever the Reuniclus doesn't have its Life Orb, it's a lot more manageable for my draft, but when it has it, when it's under Trick Room and commanding speed control, it becomes a lot tougher for me for sure. So those are really the biggest three threats against my team. I also am pretty convinced that the Savali will come, just because he doesn't have anything else on his team that can resist the Scolipede's dual stabs, being Bug and Poison. So I think he's going to bring a Ghost Savali or a Steel Savali to help him deal with that type combination, definitely with Flamethrower as one of his moves. From there it's kind of tricky because it's hard to know if he's going to be Rest, Sleep Talk, or just Toxic, Parting Shot, and another coverage move. He has a few options he can explore with that, but I do expect to see one of those two Savali options. So in order for my Scolipede to be able to be the threat that I know it can be in this matchup, I do need to be able to weaken the Savali down into range of my attacks. So with all of that said, I think I've dove into the team analysis here far enough. So let's hop on over to the team I actually decided to bring here. And like I said before, we cooked up a pretty spicy Mew for this matchup, as this Mew is disgusting against him. Okay, so this is Drain Punch, Thunder Punch, Leech Life, and Bulk Up, specially defensive. It has enough Spadef to survive a Specs Greninja's Dark Pulse, I believe, after Stealth Rock as well, so pretty fat, pretty necessary. Basically, this is designed to never die. Quite frankly, it beats his entire team as long as I don't let it get toxic, which I think I have the proper scouts for toxic and the proper ways to deal with his potential toxic users on my draft. Plus, he might even bring Tapu Fini, which would mean he might not have toxic at all. As long as this isn't toxic, this wins. It's pretty simple, quite honestly. He doesn't have anything he can really do about it. He can maybe try to trick me if he has a trick user on his team. He could try to knock me off, maybe try to crit through the bulk ups or something, but it's very rare that I see something like this, just any set, that I tell myself I don't think he can beat this, and I don't think Leo can beat this unless he gets a toxic on me. So yeah, this is a massive win con in this game. This Mew, it's able to take hits from literally everything, especially when I get up a bulk up. It's able to 1v1 anything on his team, especially after I break down some of his defensive mons that might carry toxic. So we're kind of building this team around making this shine, but we're also building it around this monster here in this Scolipede. So the combination of Scolipede plus Mew, it is so good. Okay, it's so good, because Scolipede is going to be able to break through the defensive Pokemon that might be able to toxic the Mew, as it's just kind of a panic thing, I think, for most people to just hard switch in their defensive walls to a Scolipede, thinking and hoping that they can wall out Scolipede, but the fact of the matter is, Scolipede's carrying a Z Crystal, and with the Buginium Z, I OHKO every single wall on his team with one of my coverage moves. The only exception, at +2 of course, the only exception is the Savali Ghost or Steel, as that would be able to resist my dual stabs. Everything else gets bopped by a +2 Z Mega Horn, Poison Jab, or +2 Aqua Tail. with no questions asked. He has to have a resist berry, or he has to be a Sivaldi Ghost or Steel. Everything else drops. So this should be able to get rid of whatever his defensive walls are, his defensive options that would allow him to Toxic the Mew. And once Scolipede has done its job, if he is able to stop Scolipede from sweeping him, then Mew should be clear to do its job and finish up the game. So the offensive core of these two, I think, is super solid, but I don't want to put all the pressure on Scolipede to make way for Mew. I want to have another partner to do that, and that is going to be the Mega Kang this week. So Mega Kang is not the win con. It's very rarely going to be the win con. It's a breaker, okay? It's a breaker, not a win con. If people are trying to use Mega Kangaskhan as the win con, I feel like they're doing it wrong. But even so, this combination of coverage in combination with workup hits his entire team. The combination of Return plus Ice Beam hits everything bar Bronzong, and Bronzong is hit super effectively by Crunch. So he can try to use something like Rocky Helmet Donphan to stop me, but with workup plus Ice Beam, that gets bopped hard. He can try to bring something like Rocky Helmet Bronzong, and while I do have to make physical contact with that, I can also just switch into another knockoff user on my team if I feel that Bronzong is coming in. But even so, if I have a +1 from workup, that's not going to be appreciating it at all. So certainly a solid wall breaker against this team, and will help me break down those options that he might have to Toxic the Mews. So once Scolipede and Kang do their job, pretty sure Mew is just going to be clean and home free. So that's the offensive core for this game. And in terms of my breaker, these are my breaker core. This is my breaker core, and then I have the Mew to try to clean up late game. But I need a few role players to make sure that can be done as effectively as possible. And I talked about how his team is weak to momentum. I want to really try to exploit that with my team build, as well as having more and more options to outpace that base 95 Kyurem. Trying to make most of my team outpace Kyurem so that it's not able to be an effective wall breaker against my team. We already know that the Mew can beat everything. It even beats a Kyurem 1v1. So that's kind of cool, despite the fact that my spread didn't actually outspeed Kyurem Black. It still beats it 1v1 because it's fat enough to do so. The Scolipede already outspeeds, and with the Z Mega Horn especially, +2 just drops Kyurem. Mega Kangaskhan outspeeds Kyurem Black as well by 1 point, and can do 1,000,000 with a return, especially after a +1. So all these already beat it, and in 2 cases outspeed it. And now fourth up we have the Zoroark, which is Choice Scarfed and can also outspeed and nuke the Kyurem Black with a Focus Blast, as well as offensively check a Reuniclus. Basically, by bringing Zoroark, it means that Reuniclus cannot get away with running only Psychic coverage. I feel like Leo's matchup is pretty rough against me, quite honestly, overall, so I think he might try to take some risks, maybe try to catch me not bringing my Dark type and then bring in a mono Psychic move for Reuniclus and just bring all these boosting moves to piss me off. That's a possibility, but just having this ensures that he can't do that. But honestly, maybe more importantly, this allows me to maybe disguise as my Mega Kangaskhan against him, and gives me an additional way to break down those Rocky Helmet users, which might also be those toxic users. So this also kind of points back to setting up the potential late game sweep for the Mew. So just everything is pointing towards Mew in this game, which I think is a pretty solid strategy considering how effective that Mew set really looks against him on paper. So combination of U-Turn for momentum, Focus Blast specifically for the Kyurem Black, Sludge Bomb for the Tapu Fini, and Dark Pulse for literally everything else is just super good against this team, and that base 120 special attack should put in the work against the majority of his rosters. So next up is more of a pivot around his team, and that is the Tornadus T with an Assault Vest. So this will allow me, the HP investment here allows me to survive a modest max special attack Life Orb Psyshock from a Reuniclus after Stealth Rock. So this is just another way to check the Trick Room option. It's not able to take a Thunder, but I think the Psyshock route with the Shadow Ball and Focus Blast is more likely than the Signal Beam plus Thunder route with Psychic or Psyshock. So this was the investment I went with. A combination of Hurricane and Focus Blast hits his entire team at least neutrally. Knockoff to get rid of those Rocky Helmets and potentially leftovers on Tapu Fini, and U-Turn again for momentum on things like Greninja, as this takes hits from Greninja super well. It also takes hits from Salazzle if needed. Takes hits from... It can actually take a hit from Raichu, despite the fact that that would be super effective, and it also outspeeds Raichu if needed. So yeah, just pretty nice against this team as a general pivot. Just really takes advantage of the fact that he has to switch in passive things into this. He might actually switch into the Mega Aerodactyl against this, which isn't really the most passive. It's not passive at all, quite frankly. But what I could do is I can U-turn on the Mega Aerodactyl, and because my Mew has Thunder Punch, I potentially could go into Mew and set up if it's confirmed that the Mega Aerodactyl doesn't have Taunt. I could also just U-turn directly into my final mon on this draft, which is the Seismitoad. So Seismitoad is able to switch directly into a Mega Aerodactyl without much issue whatsoever, and I do have enough bulk on this to deal with both Greninja and to deal with Mega Aerodactyl. Those are the two main mons that this is meant to deal with, and it can also, with the special defense investment, deal with something like a Tapu Fini if needed, at least to the extent where I can knock off its leftovers and then switch out. It can't beat it 1v1. You can see my coverage here. I'm not going to be Tapu Fini 1v1 with this set, but I can set up Stealth Rocks with this, and I can also knock off any items, potentially Rocky Helmets, and Scald the Mega Aerodactyl or potentially the Donphan if needed. The Rindoberry on this is nice for the Salazzle in case he happens to be a HB Grass variant. It's also nice for the Greninja if he happens to be HB Grass. It's nice, or Grass Knot, either way. It's also nice for the Donphan in case he wants to bring Seed Bomb on that as well, which I would kind of expect to potentially see if it's a more offensive Donphan. If it's defensive, I think that's a little less likely, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And of course, I do have the Stealth Rock on this because I don't really mind. I have Stealth Rocks on this, and I don't have Defog on my team either, so basically what I want to do is trade rocks against him. I think they hurt him a lot more than they hurt me, just based upon how my team is designed and how all I really need is chip damage on a few mons for my offensive options to break through him. So that's generally the team. I went through this pretty quickly overall, I feel. I tend to spend a little bit more time on the draft overview analysis compared to what my actual team is, and I guess just let me know in the comments what you feel about that. Let me know if you think I should spend more time, or if you want me to spend more time explaining my EV spreads, or stick to the current format of spending more time analyzing and breaking down the matchup and trying to describe my approach to the building instead of the specific builds. I kind of feel like just talking about the EV spreads becomes a little bit dry. That's what you see from most team builders, and while I do have pretty complex EV spreads, I don't think that's nearly as interesting, or I don't think that should be nearly as interesting as maybe just breaking down the matchup and some of my initial thoughts that were going through my head before I built the team. So yeah, just let me know what you think on all that. But this is the team, looking pretty solid overall, I feel. Overall, very fast team with the Seismitoad as a pivot to get up the Stealth Rock and the Mew to clean up late game. So, yep, I'm looking forward to this game for sure. Should be a good one. You can expect to see the battle going up tomorrow. Not sure at exactly what time quite yet, but it'll be there, I promise. And you should also see an NPL video up tomorrow as well, so I hope you're looking forward to that. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next time. Peace.